Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Collington. Joining me, as always, Mr. Kevin Durso. Kevin, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I mean, listen, you and I have been doing this show together long enough that you know that when the Flyers go 3-0-1 over the span of a week, you know I'm doing pretty good.
hmm
We got a lot to get into today. We got some good Flyers times to get into, some good conversation. As we're diving into today's show, make sure you're following us on social media. We're at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. Everywhere except Blue Sky, where it's just at Kevin Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. And hey, go to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe, help us out. Thanks. Okay, so lot to get into today. Man, I gotta tell you, I made a little joke about this right before we went on the air.
hmm
But as the days pass and as the wins pass, well, and as the points pass, right? There was the overtime loss in there. But as we
Sure.
continue on, that 6-0 victory over the Anaheim Ducks, the Cutter Gauthier game, just looms larger and larger over this team in a positive direction. The Flyers go 3-0-1 this week, like I said, off the top here. The only loss being an overtime loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets, which if I had told you leading into the week that was the loss, okay. But Kevin, good week of hockey for the boys. Let's get into it.
Sure. Well, that's where I left last week's show was, does this have any carryover effect now that they played an emotionally charged game against a bad team, but emotionally charged? Can this carry over into something? I don't know if the entire week is predicated off of just that, because I think that there isn't also some emotional charge to the way you start the 4 games this week with you're down 2-0 right away to a team like Florida. Well, to the point where the way that first period plays out, there is no carryover effect. It was terrible. And then you rebound and you rally and you find a way to win that game. I think the rest of the week is more predicated partially on that too. That you know what that really is, honestly? That was a finally for the first time, because all we really had to go off of for most of the year was, well, they beat the Rangers on Black Friday. That was great. And then the more and more you watched the Rangers, you go, that's not a headlining victory. It's not a headlining victory. That one is beating Florida, comeback fashion, a team that as of that night had been 16-0-0 when leading after 2 periods, that lost the game in regulation, no less. That's one to hang your hat on.
I gotta say, the screenshots to prove it. I sent them to you. We lived at the comeback, baby.
Yeah, okay. You did, sure. I'm not live betting that.
No, but I did actually catch a piece of that. I just had a feeling, right? Obviously
Right.
they're down 2-0 after 1. They didn't look that bad throughout the period. Sam Emerson had settled down after that, looked okay.
Yes, the second goal that Sam Emerson allows is terrible in that game, and
agree.
and that also really makes you start to think. Not only are you down 2-0 to Florida, but it's like, here's the old Sam Emerson from like right around the holiday break period. Oh boy, he's struggling. That's just such a soft goal to give up. Now you have no margin for error whatsoever at that point. And you do deliver a really good second period, but you're also faced with, this is Florida we're talking about. So you only get 1. You're still trailing. It's still an uphill battle, even being down 1, because they're that good of a team. You get the power play goal that ties it up, take a penalty, give it right back, because Sam Reinhart's a really freaking good hockey player. And, and you're left with, now you got to find another one. And you get a power play and you score on that one too. The other area that doesn't do anything has 2 power play goals against the defending Stanley Cup champions to tie the game up. And listen, this is not a nightly thing. And I'm not talking about the power play at this point. I'm shifting to the next piece of this equation. This is not a nightly thing. I'm not making a proclamation that this is truth for every single night. But on this particular night, at least in the second and third period, I straight up watched Noah Cates outplay Alexander Barkov.
And you know what? Yeah, man.
I did. There's no other way to put it. He outplayed a Selke winning, legitimate top of the line center, and made it look almost effortless the way that the rest of that game went. After that first period, I thought every time, like you get this feeling when Barkov's on the ice, Reinhart's part of that package, right? He's on the ice for that type of stuff. you got the sense as that was going on that like, well, they're going to make something happen because it's just what they do. And they kept getting pinned in their own zone more times than not. And you're like, this is incredible. This is a top line in the NHL that is struggling with this team that couldn't put together 2 wins in a row for the better part of a month at this point. And now they're getting outplayed. This is Florida. And
Yeah.
so
I have a feeling we're going to be talking about Noah Cates a lot in this show.
I think we're going to be talking about Noah Cates for a very long time, and I'm not talking about the rest of this season.
Well, I certainly hope that is the case.
If there is one clear-cut guy who's part of that RFA group right now, it's him by a mile. And one of his line mates is up too. And I do like what Tyson Forster is doing, but it's not even close in terms of who has been like. If you were placing betting odds on the Flyers team awards and you got to the most improved that the team essentially, we're talking that is like a minus 1,000 at this point, and everybody else falls in behind like randomly because it's him
who have had some really good. And there have been some guys who have taken some really nice steps forward this season. But no, I agree. I think
I think somebody we're going to talk about from the last game they played is going to probably fall second in line, I would guess.
But
he's also on the same line.
And as we move throughout the week, there was a national game on Saturday. Was there another?
No,
it was an NHL Network game,
right? It wasn't national. Everything about the Saturday game felt a little weird because yes, it was on NHL Network as their showcase game. It started at 12:30, which is typically typically an ABC thing, you would imagine. Yep. So like that didn't happen. It wasn't that at all. That was something totally different. I don't even think they have a national game. I'm going to double check. Like, I don't think they don't have one for a little while is what I'm getting at. I think the next time they have anything is end of the month when they play in, they have one more. I think it's one more anyway. ESPN Plus Hulu exclusive at the end of the month. I know that, but.
Well, what I was getting at with that was that neutral national commentators who don't necessarily cover either team on a nightly basis were speaking very highly of Noah.
Sure,
he was getting quite a lot of love from the broadcast team.
I'd say this is Saturday, so this would have been EJ and Weeksy.
Yes.
Okay. And Kevin Weeks has done a handful of games otherwise, not just these showcase games, but he's done a handful of ESPN games in Philly too. So he's seen Noah Cates a decent amount of time over the last little bit also. So I can understand how they were touting some pretty good praise for him, that line. Yeah, I can see it.
That line might be the Flyers' best line right now.
Oh, it has been.
It's not their first line. It's not going to get the most minutes necessarily, but quite frankly, right now, I think it's your second line.
It's not, but it is because there is no. John Tortorella does not do 1, 2, 3, 4. Never has, never will.
But you figure it out by the
you figure it out. And right now, like, okay, obviously, what type of player are you putting on what your supposed line one would be? Travis Konechny. So whatever line Konechny's on, you assume is number one. Yes, after that, though, I think you're right. This is number 2 right now. And it's number 2 because of the fact that they're going to get the most minutes otherwise. And you have to give them the minutes because they do both things well. They're scoring for you and they're defending well against top talent. You're throwing that line, or at least members of that line, out there against the likes of, like I said, for Florida, it's going to be Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe's out there at the end of those games. I'm sure, from the defensive side, Forsling's probably the guy who's running the show back there. When, we're talking about the goalie pulled, obviously, because that did happen in that game. They had the goalie pulled against the Islanders. So that means that it's Nelson, Barzal, Anders Lee. They're all out there, right? All the same cast of characters from the Islanders. And when it came down to it, you had the same situation with the Devils where it's Heischer, it's Hughes, probably both Hughes, honestly, at that point. Dougie Hamilton, I think, was out there for part of that. Jesper Bratt's out there. Palat, I think, is out there. Like, what group you're getting involved in when the goalie is pulled and who's trying to tie the game up. And that's who you want on the ice in those situations is, and I'm not trying to jump super far ahead, but Tyson Forster makes the play that seals the game on Saturday.
Well, I was going to mention you talk about Travis Konechny is your best forward, so whatever line he's on is the first line. But
Right.
on a lot of nights, this second line here, Forster, Cates, and Brink
Mm-hmm.
are 2, 3, and 5, 2, 4, and 5 as far as your best forwards on any given night. Like Travis Konechny has your best game most nights, a lot of nights, right? But these guys are right behind them.
In particular, one this week where he just flat out took over the whole game after a certain point. Absolutely, but you're right, yeah, and it just it keeps building with this line. I mean, if you want to shift gears from, and I think the one thing we'll leave the Florida game on this note because it was I brought up Sam Harrison letting in a soft one to make it 2-0 Florida, and then just a horrific
And after that,
turnover. Well, no, but he gave up the power play goal in the third,
right. Yeah, that's
which was debatable. Like, could it have been stopped? Probably. I think it's a tough save to make considering who's shooting it. Like, that is a 50 goal scorer, and he is going to score 50 again this year. Like, let's not kid ourselves here.
Yeah. By the way, how many Flyers had 27 last year? All last year. Did anybody score 27 last year?
Yeah, Konechny got into the 30s last year.
Okay, Konechny got 30. I think
Tippett got close. I'll check Tippett's. I'll check.
You don't even need to. That's fine. Reinhart scored his 27 to the season on January 13th.
Well, that's for anybody who wants to believe that last season, which was clearly his best, in a contract year, was a fluke, right?
And I don't think that.
No, it wasn't that at all. There you go. Konechny had 33. Tippett had 28.
Okay, yeah, I thought
but Tippett did break 27.
Close,
yeah. But and for what it's worth,
hit 30 for a while.
Now, for what it's worth, by the way, and I hear you with the. Oh yeah, Reinhart got his 27. He's at 27, and it's January.
What I'm saying is that's an elite scorer.
No, and I'm not dismissing that at all. I'm just trying to throw out there is that I said Konechny had 33 last year, and he's got 21 on January 20th. Also,
he's
tied for 15th in the league. He's got the same number of goals as well. That's a little skewed because we know how much time Ovechkin missed. Ovechkin would have 30 if he didn't miss time.
Alexander Ovechkin's insane. 28, by the way.
But Konechny being tied with Nikita Kucherov is no fluke here. Konechny being 1 goal ahead of Connor McDavid is no fluke here. Those guys have played. How about this? How about this one? Konechny's one behind a guy like David Pastrnak. Like Pastrnak had what kind of seasons David Pastrnak has had.
So this year for Travis Konechny feels a lot like Claude Giroux 2017.
A little. I understand
where it starts to feel like he's putting himself in the conversation with the elite players in the league.
I think, certainly there was one part of this where, because Austin Matthews actually said something about it, which just confirmed what I thought all along, because we sat there and talked about it when he made Four Nations or bringing up the Olympics or anything like that, which is like when he goes and plays on one of these teams, makes an all-star team, now gets on Four Nations, whatever it is, we may look at the other forwards on a Team Canada roster and go McKinnon, Crosby, McDavid, those types of names, right? Marner, how does he belong in that category? And I think that everybody else sits there and goes, what are you talking about? Of course he belongs.
I think he's going to show you. And
yeah. Oh, I think so.
And quite frankly, he goes out there and does something silly. If they put him on McDavid's wing and he has 9 points in 4 games, something crazy, which I think is entirely possible, that contract extension is going to start to look real good.
I already think it is going to look good. The question about the contract, it's not about the individual to me with his contract extension. It was about the rest of the team. If you're going to give that guy that kind of contract in that situation and not use him as a piece to trade to really re-up everything, because imagine if he wasn't under contract yet. If this is still a contract year and you've got a guy with 21 goals and, oh, by the way, let's do the point total also, where he's at 54 points. He's alone in 10th in the league. He's probably at that point, when you consider the point totals for everybody else who's above him and exactly what their status is with their teams, he's the number 1 guy on every trade board if he doesn't have a contract.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Where the team is at. And I think this contract is going to go down timing wise, and regardless of how it plays out as far as the length of the contract,
Right.
signing it when he did is going to look really good for Danny Briere.
Well, I don't know if you saw the clip also. There was a Flyers Daily clip where Jason Murtias sat down with Konechny as part of a mid-season thing. And Konechny said something about, even though like the contract doesn't kick in until next year, but he knows that like when you sign a big ticket and you're going to make money, that kind of money, and be a top paid player among a lot in the league, there is an expectation that you've got to deliver on it. And he's kind of taken that to heart a little bit. And he wants to be that level player. And now he's sitting there ranked top 10 in points in the NHL.
And I think he needs to be, because I mean, we talked about it. Looking at the long-term future of this team, Matvei Mishkov is probably on your top line.
Should be.
Right. And Travis Konechny was going to and is currently in the process of stepping his game up, proving that he can be a next level player and hold the first line for now and eventually be on a really good second line. Like he's doing the type of work
Yeah.
that needs to be done if you're going to be on this roster all the way through the rebuild or whatever form the rebuild ends up taking.
Sure.
And
so
this is going to look really savvy.
Sure. So that's I'm trying to figure out how do we get on Travis Konechny from where we were at with the end of the
idea, but
Florida game.
I love talking about Travis Konechny, so I
Exactly.
don't really care how
no.
we got
I'm
there.
just trying to remember because we were talking about how he took over the game, kind of in against the Islanders, which I don't want to jump the Columbus game just yet.
No, let's get into Columbus. I'm not really sure how we got here, but let's get into Columbus.
Yeah, that was an interesting game. I kind of feel like they probably could have pulled that one out. Honestly, look, first of all, it's a shootout. Shootouts are shootouts. We know how that goes. You're playing, if that was an Ivan Fedotov game, so it was kind of, it is what it is kind of thing.
You might be getting a point out of it.
Sure. Well, he played well. I don't want to take away from the fact that he played well in the game, all things considered. Like,
I agree.
He gives up a breakaway goal and a 2-on-1 goal to a guy who I said last week, and now it's only been furthered as the week has gone on, should be in the Norris conversation. Better be at this point. Like seriously, the thing with Columbus, and I'm not trying to dismiss that they're not a good story right now. Of course they are. They're in a playoff spot at this stage. It's a great story. Their biggest problem right now, if they don't choose to go out and try to get something at the deadline, is that entire team feels like it's run on one line and a top defenseman. Mm-hmm. The rest of those guys do nothing for me. You stick Kirill Marchenko, Adam Fantilli out there with, like that group out there. Okay, I'm worried about your offense. That line is dangerous. You put Werenski on the ice. Werenski's going to probably do something every single shift. That's how good he is. But they do not have a lot of depth that I get really seriously concerned about otherwise. Like it just is what it is. Like I'm not overly impressed, especially in that particular game. I mean, that was a team that had been sitting there since I think the previous Saturday. The Flyers played on Monday. They look like the better team for 2 periods.
By the way, in case you were wondering, Zach Werenski was on the ice for 31-30 that game.
Insanity. And he nearly scored it for the hat trick in overtime after being on the ice for what I think had to be a minute and 15 seconds. Like, had played almost the entire shift defending, somehow or other found a gear to get a step on the Flyer that was on the ice and got a scoring chance for the hat trick. I think that might have been the only shot on. No, they actually had 3 shots on goal in the overtime. So I thought that they didn't have that many, honestly. But anyway,
closest Columbus Blue Jacket was Ivan Provorov with 23-25, 8 minutes less.
Because they know
insanity.
Because they know that if you're going to do anything from the defensive side of that with that team, it's sticking Werenski on the ice and letting everybody else take their turn when he needs a break. Like I look at the rest of that roster and I go, Fantilli's got tons of potential, skill player, obviously. Marchenko's a really good player. Kent Johnson and Voronkov have had good years. I'll give them that. Cole Sillinger's kind of in the middle. I still have hope for him, but like you're watching them stick out James Van Riemsdyk, and with all due respect to JVR, who played here for a long time, you know what part of his career he's in.
He knows it too, and
right. You know,
Given the circumstances, he knows what he's doing on that
and
team.
well,
Let's be
and you
honest.
know you're not sticking out with all due respect. Again, they're role players. You're not putting Sean Corrali on the ice or Zach Aston Reese on the ice to score goals all the time. You're putting them out there to kind of stabilize, and you've got this group
And
of guys who can score.
yep. And more importantly, you're not putting those guys out there, the Sean Corrales, the James Van Reems, like your veterans.
You're
You're not putting them out there in games where there's 4 minutes left and you're down a goal.
Oh, I was gonna and I was gonna sit there and say you're not putting them out there in overtime, is what it is. Who went out
Well,
there
not
and
even.
who went out there in overtime? Fantilli, Johnson, Marchenko. I think Voronkov takes shifts in overtime. Sillinger might have had one.
Yeah, and obviously
Like you've got your
Johnny.
group.
Yeah, sure. And obviously, Johnny Gaudreau aside, respectfully, the prospects on this team, the young players are on in this team are in a way better spot than they've been at any point in the last
Right.
7 or 8 years.
Well, and let's
They
not forget also, I do want to mention Sean Monahan's been out right now, so that's another piece of the
yes,
puzzle here. Like I don't want to take away from the fact that they are missing players at the moment. And to be honest with you, that's a game where you also understand the loss a little bit because they've played really well at the moment. So if things are vibing right,
oh yeah, Columbus has
you're
been good.
gonna you're gonna win games. Like they were playing really well coming in, and they still are.
Absolutely, that game mattered as far as playoff standings and stuff. Now, obviously, it's a little early to be hardcore scoreboard watching, but I mean, at the time of that game, Columbus was in a
Right.
playoff spot, and they're
I
currently
assume
1 point out.
I assume that this is and guess what? They might be back in by the end of the night because they're playing the Islanders as we record this. So
Okay,
they by the way, they're 7-2-1 in their last 10, not including that game they're actively playing. So there you go. Like
that's pretty good.
yeah, so they're right there. Well, and let's not forget too, Columbus probably fell out of that standings position because Ottawa and Boston had really good weekends also, and like at least point
Columbus
wise.
also has 3 games in hand over Boston, so they're
Two.
right there.
I've got two. I got
Well,
two,
the game they're currently playing. Oh, you're right. It is 2. You're right. You're right.
and
You're
so
right.
it'll be one after
I thought
tonight. Actually,
I thought Boston said 49. It says 48. That's my
yeah,
bad.
that's what I'm saying.
But yeah, regardless, like Columbus is right there in the playoff mix. Like we are not moving forward. I believe there's one more matchup with the Columbus Blue Jackets this year, and we cannot
Yes,
look at that.
guess when it is.
It's right at the end of the season,
It's
isn't
the
it?
last home game of the
Yeah.
season.
And at this point in time, obviously a lot can change. If they fall out of it, I expect them to sell some pieces at the deadline. Like that might be a different team come the end of the season. But as we sit here right now,
Which one?
Well, both teams, but particularly Columbus.
Right.
And as it sits right now, you can't look at that as a game against, sad sack Columbus that's not going to matter. You're going to walk right through them, get your 2 points, and blah, 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 blah. Like, man, you got to play your starting goalie. Like, that's a real game.
Columbus is a team that also could sell veterans and still get by because what are you not trading? You're not trading Johnson, Marchenko. Obviously not Werenski, who's a veteran. I get that part.
You're not trading Monahan.
Well, you're not trading Monahan, but you don't need to trade Monahan to a degree. Like, what do you need to trade Sean Monahan for? He's playing well for you. He's giving you something. Trade some of these other guys if that's what you want to do, if they have value. And then everybody else is young enough anyway that why would you trade them?
Well, you see, you touched on it right there. And it was like, how much value do these pieces have? You get a 4th-round pick for Sean Corrali.
See, I don't even think they want.
A conditional second for Zach Aston Reese. Like, come on.
Well, sure, I hear you. Well, I wonder if they couldn't not sell low, but like try to get somebody who's even like one of the. I don't want to straight up call them quadruple A players, but kind of get one of these guys waiting in the wings, and you move a veteran player for a guy who's not necessarily a prospect or a draft pick, and just a guy who's been around for a little bit, who's like 26, 27, and see if this guy can help your team.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You tell me if you wanted to move, say, a JVR type and say you go play somewhere else where you're guaranteed to make the playoffs. Let's send you to Tampa. Let's send you to Toronto again. Something like that. And
I think JVR to Toronto makes a ton of sense, by the way.
And they send you back a player on their minor league roster who holds a chance of being an NHL level player to a degree. And I'll give you a perfect example, and I'll use a Flyer example for it.
I was
If
going to say, let me pitch one to you.
Sure, go ahead.
You're the Columbus GM.
Okay.
You call up Danny Briere and say, you send me Ola Lixel, I'll send you Sean Corrali. And maybe there's a small pick involved somewhere to even it out or whatever, but that's the base of the trade.
Right.
What do you say? What do you say to that?
I mean, I don't know if the
Or
Flyers say
maybe
that, but
well, okay, but let's say they're roughly in it come the trade deadline, and Danny wants to go add a depth center but doesn't want to do anything crazy, doesn't want to sell any,
yeah, that's
we're
fair.
not
That would be a
trading Oliver
reason.
Bonk here.
That would be, well, the only thing I disagree with on that part of the trade is I don't know if Columbus wants to give up centers either.
Okay.
Like that,
Well,
like Corrali's got his role,
okay, but
role
what if
in Columbus, and they like him.
okay, let's say it's Zach Aston Reese then.
Well, then no, I'm probably not doing that deal for another winger. Not from the Flyers' perspective, but
They have
you're
him listed as a center on here, but I get you.
he plays wing there. Let's be real.
Okay.
He's played left
That's
wing
fair.
every time I've done a game preview. He's on the left
Yeah,
wing.
there's like 5 or 6 centers listed. You're right.
Yeah. So, no, but like, okay, but you're in the ballpark. Like the guy I was thinking of is and I'm gonna pretend he's on another team, not the Flyers in this case, but let's say Toronto had this guy, and Toronto and Columbus work something out. All right, Toronto will take JVR back, and you trade. This is not an active roster trade at this point. And Toronto says, we've got Anthony Richard. Take him. I think Columbus would do a deal like that to get a veteran guy that may not be contributing as much and get somebody with a little bit more of something that fits their game and helps them and has potential.
That makes sense.
And then you still sold. You got a player who's way younger, and you do something like that. That might be the type of thing that Columbus is able to do when trade deadline rolls around, where it still looks like selling, but it doesn't hurt your team actively, potentially. You know what I mean? So anyway, they have been a great story, and you know, it was just one of those games. You know, if it wasn't for Zach Werenski, if it wasn't for a couple of bad turnovers, you probably win the game. You know, unfortunately, you lose the game. You still got a point out of it at that given point in time. I believe that was because they had already they had gone 2 games in a row with no points because they lost to Toronto at home in regulation, and they lost to Dallas in that really ugly game. But you were starting to feel better about the fact that it was like, okay, points in 4 of the last 6. A win would have been nice. I think if the rest of the week had gone differently, we really look at that game as a missed opportunity. It feels a little better now that it's part of a 5-game point streak, and 2 more good games were slapped against it, kind of.
You played 3 games in 4 days, and you got 5 out of 6 points.
Yeah.
In the NHL, it doesn't really matter who the opponents are. You'll take that against essentially anybody.
In the NHL, it doesn't matter who the opponents are because half the league is not very good.
Half the league sucks. Right.
I mean, I'm just okay, and this is what I think this is part of what I wanted to bring up, because you brought up, okay, Columbus is a point out as we speak. They could be in it again by the end of the night, right? Like Boston just passed them this afternoon with a win to go a point above them. So Columbus can just return the favor and take Boston's spot, actually with a point, not even with a win. So it doesn't matter. You've got, and we got to include this piece of the equation because this is a lot closer than people want to believe or may not know about. Tampa is 3rd in the Atlantic at 53 points. Ottawa's got the first wildcard spot, 52. Boston momentarily has the second wildcard spot at 52. Columbus is sitting at 51. They are playing. Montreal's at 50. Rangers are at 48. Flyers are at 48. And then right behind them, you've got 46 for Detroit and Pittsburgh. It is a logjam of, what did I just roll off? That's 8 teams that's 8 teams below the line, and then 3 more above it. So that's 11 teams out of 16 in the Eastern Conference that are
6 points.
And that's not. And I'm not sitting here saying that's 11 teams competing for the playoffs. There's 5 others that are locks.
Yep. And that's with like 6 or 7 points separating.
Right. So I've got, I've got 5 teams that are essentially locks. 2, 3 more that hold the playoff spots, and then 8 more after, or 7 more after that. Sorry, or 6 more. Sorry. So I went a little over on that. Don't ask for math equations here. But
No,
still,
that's okay.
there's 6 below the line, 2 that are in the wild cards, 1 more in a divisional spot that is not solidified at all, especially when you consider what Ottawa's done lately. They've kind of found a groove. So Ottawa could be in that third. Ottawa could be in that third spot in the Atlantic by the end of the week.
I mean, and yeah, absolutely.
Very legitimately.
Easily.
Boston, who knows what the hell happens, because they've been all over the map. Columbus is riding a bit of a hot streak now, but we've seen, what did I say about the Flyers case? This is exactly the point and they're not even in one of the playoff spots, but what did I say about them? You have 1 3-game winning streak, 1 really good week, and you're right back in the race. And that's exactly what happened with them. Like, they're, as much as they're 4 points out of a spot, they're also still right there because they've put together some results. And you do have to factor in, and I'm not going to go to looking ahead now, but they're going to play a couple of teams that are right in the mix that you control what they do.
Yeah, it's we touched on it briefly on last week's show, but from the Islanders game last Thursday through the end of the month, Flyers play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 games. 7 of them are against the Islanders, the Devils, and the Rangers. 6 of them are just against the Islanders and the Devils.
Well, at this point, they're down to what, 6 left for the month?
That is that whole chunk.
Yes.
Right? We
So
sit here with 6 games left. There's a game in Detroit on against Detroit on Tuesday. It's a home game.
Yep.
And then after that, you're playing the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils the rest of the month.
Yeah.
And it is time, right? Like, we talk about figuring out how the cream rises to the top and blah, 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 blah. If any amount of these are 2-point games, meaning to say they don't go to overtime, both team, if there's any sort of separation in these games, you're going to start to get some answers. It's not going to lock itself out, obviously,
right,
because it is still January.
Well,
but you're going to see if the Rangers really are here, or if they're going to slip to, towards the bottom of this group. You're going to see if the Islanders have any fight to stay in this race. You're going to see if the Devils really are frauds, like I predicted in our season preview. It's time to figure it out. And, like, the game on Saturday, by the way, the Devils are frauds. We'll get into that.
I knew I couldn't wait to talk about this game because I knew what was coming.
I mean, okay. I think the title of this episode is going to be Fraud Check, because Flyers fraud check the Devils pretty bad on Saturday. We'll get into that. Let's do the Islanders game first.
That's the thing, though. You just don't know. Like, I was sitting last night. Once I think at that point, once football was over, because truly, I think by that point, everything ended early enough that everything ended early enough that I caught the last part of Montreal Rangers, and Montreal had to come back in that game and won in overtime. And it's like, even then the Rangers can't find a way to beat teams like that. Like, it's still not figured out.
By the way, real quick, Philadelphia Eagles 35, Washington Commanders 13. Okay, moving on.
Wow. See, I wish I was that confident. I think it's a closer game, way closer. But anyway, and I'm like, I don't do score.
Jalen's throwing for 350.
Okay.
Yep.
As long as his knee's okay, I guess.
Man, he's going to stand in the pocket and throw. Okay, anyway, we have not covered football on this show in a very, very long time. So
we haven't needed to. By this time last year, there was no football to talk about.
Well, the first year of this show was the 2017
Super Bowl 52.
We started this show in January of 2017. So the first thing we covered was that run. It was crazy. Anyway, if you've been here that long, by the way, thank you very much. Hit the like button. So we go to
that was back between the 4 for 4 days, right?
Yeah, it sure was. Absolutely. we were you would think the Philadelphia sports podcast.
That was long before I was part of this equation.
Sure was. Thursday night, Long Island. Bo Horvat scores in the first period.
Yeah, we should talk about that one specifically, though. And I'm not trying to do the news. Like, the second half of this is not the part that applies. That's news from recent, but everything surrounding that goal had one. You got to remember something, okay? Flyers Islanders. That is a game that has 2 very fiery coaches on the benches here. to say the
Okay.
least.
Right.
And
Patrick
one
Waugh and John Tortorella.
and
Oh,
one of them was showing it off in the first period, and because
rightfully so.
yeah, rightfully so. I listen. I
Well, let's talk about
understand.
it.
I
In,
understand. Like,
in,
okay,
in case you somehow missed it, let me lay it out here real quick.
yeah, go
In
ahead.
case you somehow missed it, there's a play, and you can look it up. Spoiler alert, he ended up getting suspended for it. So there's a video breaking it down from the NHL. But Ryan Paling is cutting to the net, and he kind of is down by the faceoff circle, and he kind of cuts towards the net. And as he
Hmm.
does, I don't remember his first name,
Maxim
Tsiplikov,
Siplikov. Yeah.
Maxim Tsiplikov from the Islanders comes across through the slot and absolutely brains Ryan Paling. Um, man, you talk about every time they do these videos, they talk about, well, this player could deliver the check legally if they went through the body and didn't choose the head. And there's all these things that they could have done to deliver the check legally.
Yeah.
And Siplikov did zero of them.
Here's the thing. You listen.
Ooh,
I'm sure if you slow it down, maybe he catches shoulder first a little bit. Here's the thing. Today's segment, or this segment of the show, is being brought to you by the word intent. You know what I mean?
yep.
Because I don't think like that doesn't change the intention. Even if he does catch the shoulder a little bit first, what's the intention there? I'm gonna pile drive this guy.
I'm going to put my shoulder through this dude's jaw.
Right. And it's everything. It's the way the head snaps back, the fact that as soon as he hits the ground, he's reaching for his head. So you just got a head injury of some kind, whether regardless. It's a vicious hit.
Right,
And
he
I know,
gets up, he goes right back down. Like it took Paling a while to get off the ice.
and look,
It was awful.
the thing that bothers you about that situation is the fact that from the second that the officials decide there's no penalty, even if you reduce it to a minor, all right,
Well,
you
and
want to call it a minor, call it a minor. It's
in case someone missed it, by the way. So what happened? There was originally no call on the play. The refs gathered. They had a conversation about it. They announced a major, so it would be up for review. They went. They took a look at it. They reviewed it. They A B C D
mhm.
E. They came out. There was
should
no penalty on the
yeah,
play.
should mention, by the way, this happens off of a short-handed rush. The Islanders are on a power play at this given point in time,
Yep.
so that already has things skewed a little bit. I believe there was a minute left on the power play, actually,
About a
almost
minute,
exactly. I think
minute.
it was no, I think it was
Yeah.
almost exact. So it would have been, if they gave a major, it would have been a minute at 4-on-4, and then a 4-minute power play for the Flyers.
4 minute
So it wouldn't have
major
even
power
been your
play. Yeah.
standard, like, oh, the Flyers just get a major, power play or whatever. The So they say there's no penalty on the play. And
And that changes the whole
well,
game.
and John
Seems to me.
Tortorella's livid. He wants to know what's going on. It always cracks me up because listen, John Tortorella is not the tallest guy in the world. We've discussed this, right?
Correct.
When he decides I need a word with the officials, I'm coming over there. He pushes aside these his
Grown
players,
professional
right?
athletes. Yeah.
Like it's
Gearing up.
nothing. Get out of my way. And he goes over, and I'm going to slam the top of the
Oh,
of the bench, and I want an explanation right now. Get over here. I want an explanation.
and they part like the Red Sea for it
Oh, they
too.
do.
It's
Well,
really funny. He starts coming and
when
everybody
that stuff
dives out of the
happens,
way.
just watch everybody behind him. He did it one time, and Michkov's the one who's right behind him. Like, he actually shoved
Yep.
Michkov out of the way. This is a 20-year-old kid who's been in North America for what, 6 months?
Right, 10 minutes. Right. Yeah.
Like, you could just picture the look on like he'll look like.
Well, and one of the ones behind him in this one was, I believe, Joel Farabee, who was also just absolutely giving it to the official. But we don't really.
Well,
expect
that's a
anything
different
else from
story,
him
though.
at
See,
this
some of
point.
them don't mind it.
Right.
Like, I'm pretty sure in one of the other ones too, Tyson Forster's the one there, and he's already laughing, which is funny too. Like, some of them laugh, some of them are looking like, holy crap, this guy's wild, and some of them are just giving it right back. Like, Konechny would do that. Konechny would be giving it too, of course. Like,
But
that.
regardless, it is really unfortunate to see. First of all, it's unfortunate to see the hit get laid. It's unfortunate to see Paling injured on the play.
Yes.
But then from a systemic league-wide perspective, it's really unfortunate to watch your referees skate over, take a look at the video, decide there's no penalty,
Right.
and then the league, who theoretically the refs are representing in this situation,
Right.
right? and they look at it and go, "Oh, it's actually a 3-game suspension." And Siplikov will sit for 3 games, including this Friday's game against the
Yeah,
Flyers,
the
which
first the first rematch.
I can't imagine was an accident, by the way. Like, I think
No.
if the schedule looks different, I think Siplikov
No,
gets 2.
and it was one of the most widely asked questions I got when the suspension was laid down was, how does he get suspended for something that he wasn't penalized for? And I had to explain, based on the rule book, those video reviews for a major penalty are not conducted by league officials in Toronto. There are people in the room that make sure that the officials on the ice are getting every possible angle, but that is as far as the league takes it. It is the
The
complete
referees do
discretion.
the
Right, is the complete discretion of the officials on the ice. So, translation, a 3-game suspension given out a day after that hit was not penalized. Translation, they got it wrong. Yep,
Well,
they got
and
it wrong.
the refs are ostensibly acting as agents of the league in this situation, right?
Right.
Like, they are upholding the league's rule book. So I am sure Gary Bettman and whoever's in charge of the referees union and Tim Peel and all that are whoever are all very upset, that this referee has embarrassed the NHL in a manner of speaking, right? Because we have a different standard of, well, I mean, it's not a penalty, but you suspend him 3 games for it. It's
Yeah.
very strange. But regardless, the effect it had on the game was that by going uncalled, and we've seen this happen kind of throughout hockey's history, is when a dirty play is not properly punished, the players will tend to police it themselves. And
Try to.
for a long period of time in this game, quite frankly, the Flyers forgot the puck existed when Siplikov was on the ice, because everybody from Tyson Forrester to Garnet Hathaway to Sean Couturier to Scott Lawton, everybody gave Siplikov a whack or a
Right.
word or a shove or a glove or the entire game.
So as far as I know, the power play goal was scored with 1 second left on the power play, by the way.
Okay.
Which by the way, you could see coming from a mile away, because it shouldn't have even been a power play anymore. Even if you just give them 2 and leave it at that. Okay, fine. And right
And
after
the Flyers were playing emotional at that point. Like,
well,
it's
sure.
the
Now that
goal's gonna come.
because that's the point. But when the officials do something like that, you turn it into a free for all. Now, who's to say? And listen, I'm not saying like it's not condoned at all. Nobody should do this. But who's to say that any of them couldn't have run over to take your pick? Okay, it's not even a star player who got knocked out of the game. Like, Paling's not a star player, but let's say it was somebody more significant. Let's say it was Michkov, for that matter. Who's to say that you can't go over and go find Matthew Barzal and say, I'm just suckering the guy because you didn't call a penalty on something that was absolutely should have been penalized. So if you're not going to handle it and do this game justice, then we're going to handle it.
Exactly. And quite frankly, if it was Matvey Michkov, I would have called Garnet Hathaway's lawyer ahead of time. Because that man was gonna need Long Island bail money. Let's be honest.
Well, what did I text the group afterwards? I said Garnet Hathaway might get suspended for, might be the one getting suspended by the end of the game.
Right. And then, so what does he do?
Scores a shorthanded goal.
Immediately. Like, and not immediately. It was the next.
Well, yeah, it was second period.
But
they spent the rest of the first period was nothing more than, we're going to try to settle the score. They were completely focused on let's just do that. I mean, took another penalty right away. It's as soft of a slashing call as you are ever going to find.
Correct. That is the refs going, well, we missed this big old call. We really messed that up, and this game is going to get really, really out of hand. We're going to call.
Well, we better call right.
We say.
Well, no. They were watching it because they knew. Look who got slashed, even if it's lightly. Mm-hmm. Look who got touched. Obviously, there's a reason why it's him. We better do something about this. All right, whatever. Your answer is the better answer to all of this is the 3-goal second period that you have that puts you in a position to ultimately win this game. And I'm going to tell you, over the course of that second period, as the Flyers outshot the Islanders 11-6, as the Flyers score 3 goals, as the Flyers score a shorthanded goal. We haven't done an Islander game this year yet, right? That was the first one. Boy, do I see the problems with that team. Oh, that team, they're not very good either.
No, no, they're so
They've got players. I'm not trying to say they don't have players. Like when that power play should be better than what it is when you employ Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, Matthew Barzal, Noah
over
Dobson.
than
Like,
that.
yeah.
Well, we've spent a lot of time this year talking about half the league sucking, and most of the teams are kind of in this clump. Unfortunately, the Islanders are starting to separate themselves and not in the positive direction.
No, they're like bottom
Um,
feeder material almost.
they're 15th in the East. A couple games in hand, it's not completely dead. They can still find themselves in
The
kind
game
of
in
the
hand thing
scrum.
feels really weird this year because it feels like it doesn't matter. Like sometimes it matters. Oh, this team is behind you, but they're playing well, so they're going to probably overtake. Like if we looked at a team, and this year there may not be a good example, but like if let's say like here's one for you. Montreal's been playing pretty darn good lately, like better than they started.
Then they should be probably. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're 2 points back of one of the playoff spots and have 2 games in hand. And you sit there and you go, would I take them over Boston right now? Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because they don't quit. Maybe
Maybe.
that's one. But there are others. For a little while, I thought Detroit a little bit like that because Detroit, when the coaching change happened, got the typical
They got
coaching
the
change boost. Now they're back behind the Flyers again. But for a little while, they were right there knocking on the door of one of those playoff spots with the success they were having when McClellan took over. And it's like, maybe, like, we know they're already building a young core, so maybe there is something to this. And then it kind of faded again.
Detroit ends up keep an eye on Patrick Kane.
Oh yeah. I don't. The thing is,
he's still looking
is
solid.
Is there another team that you could even envision him playing for than like other than ones he's already played for? Because like you're not going to just go back to Chicago at this point. Like
Matthew,
they're not going to make the playoffs.
Kane, they score.
Oh God, I can't see that happening. So he's just supposed to complete the original sixth circuit. Is that what it is?
Listen. Here's the thing. The East has a power vacuum. Who are the good teams in the East?
Washington, Toronto.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Is Washington a good team?
Yes.
Or are they having a good year? I think those are two different questions.
But you know what?
If they're a good team, I think they can sustain it into the playoffs and they can blah, 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 blah.
The thing is that
if they're just having a good year and Alexi Protas shuts it down in the playoffs and Dylan Strome shuts it down in the playoffs, and if that team quiets up, it quiets up in a hurry.
I get that. The thing is that to me, if that was going to fall apart, it was going to fall apart the second Ovechkin went down, and it didn't.
Okay.
And that's why I think that that's sustainable for them. Not only that, but they've got a cushion in the division that is getting ridiculous at this point.
Okay, fair enough. And okay, that's fine. Even if I give you Washington's a good team. I think Toronto's a good team. I think Florida's a good team, and that might be the end of the list. Maybe Carolina.
I think Carolina, because of their standing position, I think people are not going to give enough credit to. I think they're better than. When it comes down to it, they're closer to Washington than Jersey is. I know what the standings say, but they're closer.
Oh, I know. The Devils are frauds, but
I mean,
right,
look,
so
anything from the Metro, anything from the Metro, I'm already out on this anyway because I would be wrong.
About the Capitals.
No, but I'm saying I would be wrong about who I thought the team out of the Metro was going to be anyway. That's a whole thing. I still feel completely 1,000% confident in who I think is very least Eastern Conference final. I still feel very confident about who I have coming out of the Atlantic side of that picture. 1,000%.
What I'm saying is, just back to my point about Toronto, is that if there's only 3 or 4 good teams in the East, then the teams that can add are going to be supremely advantaged, especially heading into the playoffs.
I think your point also is kind of to piggyback off the Washington equation that you made. Are they a good team or are they having a good year? Both things can be true. And I think and sometimes I think you have to recognize one of the things, I'm not going to try to speak too soon on this portion of this equation, But
Hmm.
since you already referenced them once in the show, I will reference them a second time. There's an element 2 years ago when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl that when it's over and you lose, you sit there and you kind of have this feeling of, oh, damn, that might have been the best chance that you have with that group. This
Well,
might
they
be as
lost.
good as
They lost because of a bad holding call, but
but regardless, it doesn't matter. My point is that if you don't make it happen for whatever reason, all of the things collectively within that game that don't go your way, you start to have this feeling of if we'll, like that might be the best it gets. You can make that case baseball wise with the Phillies.
2023 Edmonton Oilers or
Well,
2024 Edmonton Oilers.
Well, that see, I don't know about that because, well, or no, like, listen, what I'm saying, I'm not saying about their future. I'm talking about that whole run felt 2010 Flyerish to a degree.
Okay,
You know what I
I
mean?
get that.
I'm talking about when, and listen, maybe that's the Phillies equation of 2022. There's a difference between being a team like the Eagles were 2 years ago, where you're the best all year long, you're one of the best, you're right there, and because of how well it's going, you go, maybe that group just doesn't get back there. Maybe like the next time you're having Super Bowl conversation is not this coach, is not this quarterback, is not this guy, is not that guy. And I get it. In the NFL, that stuff changes over every 3 years, practically. It might as well, right? You can revamp your entire team in 3 years. Hockey is not like that. You better have a core in place that does it for a while. I get that. But you do start to have this feel like sometimes you're just putting together a year. Like, do you think here's a great example. And they ended up winning a playoff series the following year anyway, but still, let's just qualify it. You think Boston looks back on 2 years ago and says, man, we had the greatest regular season ever. It was the last, it turns out to be the last year of Bergeron. That was
Man,
the time when
we should have played Linus Ullmark in Game 5 and
well,
Game
well,
6.
for whatever reason, it doesn't go your way. My point is, do you look back on it now and go, that was the year? And if it didn't happen, I don't know when the next year comes. There's an element where a team like Washington has to start thinking that way. We're having a year. We better play all the right cards in the playoffs and try to avoid the letdown from a great regular season. Because, man, does it feel like a year right now. Like, they are far and away the best team in the NHL. And it's not even by point total. Like, there's teams with about the same number of points that they have, but points percentage, they are far and away the best team. Like, it is not even remotely close.
It's crazy to think because okay, the last couple of years the Capitals have kind of been, well, Ovi's getting the goal record. That was kind of the
Yeah.
main focus of the team, and it certainly looks like that's going to happen. By the way, that mission seems like it's going to be a success, whether it's this year or next year. It does at this point seem inevitable.
I mean, if it's next year, it's early next year.
That's what I'm saying. And well, I mean, listen, the guy's 400 years old. Knock on wood. He could get hurt again. I'm knock on wood.
He also
Okay, so
heals like a machine though.
I know. So are you listen, this whole conversation started with speculating on where Patrick Kane's going to. Are you saying left wing Alexander Ovechkin, right wing Patrick Kane?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Holy smokes, that power play gets crazy.
What I'm talking no, but I think to your point though, if there's so few teams in the league that feel that way, like do you think Toronto doesn't think that way too?
I agree. No, I listen.
This might be the like, and I'm not trying to like make it out like, oh, it's the year. Like I know everybody like, especially when you've been suffering as long as Toronto has. Yeah,
for the first time in a long time, Toronto is not in LTIR. They are actively accruing cap space. I don't think that's an accident. I think Toronto's going to do something at the deadline.
Like, let me ask you this: where do you draw the cut line on like this group of teams? Because I have mine.
Well, I just spelled it out in the East. I think there's like 3.5, depending on if you give Carolina the credit. And
fair.
Then as far as the West goes, I think Winnipeg's a good team.
Yep.
I think Vegas is a good team.
Mm-hmm.
I think Edmonton and Minnesota and Dallas.
So yeah, so it's top 7. You're giving the top 7 in the league.
And then I might even give it to Colorado too, but like
nah. It's Colorado's a tough one. Like what I'm looking at when I look at this,
so much raw talent on that team. I have to assume
what I'm looking at is I'm just looking at points percentages.
Okay.
strictly looking at points percentages, and I draw the cut line. Like Carolina's on the verge. They do need to figure some things out, but I think they should be. Maybe they're the team that adds, honestly. Maybe they're the team that sits there and goes, we need more to compete with everybody above us. We need to add something.
Do they have the money to do that?
I know. Well, we'll see about that.
Right.
I look at a team like, and they're not even top 10 in the league. But LA is a sneaky team because of the points percentage, because of all the games they still have to play. They're sneaky. I'm not saying that means, like, I'm not calling them elite.
No. I was looking at Carolina. By the way, Carolina's cap space, projected deadline cap space, $264,000.
So they'd have to free something up or have an
They're not
injury.
doing anything major, right?
Well, free something up. That's all. It depends on
Yeah.
it depends on where you look.
Yeah. I don't know.
You know,
Anyway,
well, no, you know where that comes from. I know exactly where it comes from. When
okay.
if when Freddie Anderson has another injury and he ends up on LTIR,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
They are one injury away from being able to add.
Yeah. But if that doesn't happen, then they're
Well, they
probably
power.
stuck.
Maybe they look. Maybe they think they're better because they have Freddie Anderson as a 1A 1B. I don't know. Their whole goaltending situation perplexes me a little bit. It really just there are nights where Kochekov looks great. There are nights where he looks terrible. I don't know.
Goaltending is a mystery. We know.
Sure.
We have learned that in Philadelphia, and that's actually a great way to get us back on track to the Philadelphia Flyers because I
Well, this was an
I
interest. I mean, we're still on we're still talking about the Islander game a little bit. It was an
there
interesting game. They got through, to the lead. They give one back right away. Cam York scores, so that was a big deal.
huge for him.
Yeah, that was a big goal for him. I agree with that. And so, because I think really because of that goal, you're in a position they end up having to kill a penalty late in the period. So it's the empty net situation. They're killing a penalty. They get scored on. It was weird too, by the way, because I'm pretty sure I'm trying to do this from memory, but I'm pretty sure that the Islanders had the league worst power play and penalty kill.
Yeah, and their home power play is one of the worst of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but that power play scores twice on you to make this
2-4,
some form of,
baby.
to make this some semblance of a game. But the Flyers end up winning the game. They were the better team for the last two periods when it really until it got down to it where it was like, okay, now the Islanders are firing at will and really controlling this thing. Like it got dicey a little, but
Sure.
they pull it off. So
Yeah, and then Noah Cates gets his 10th of the season, gets into double digits with the empty netter. I did want to mention that. So it is nice to see him get double digits.
Yeah, when we're going to talk about him again with the next game too, because he plays a pretty crucial role in the in that game too. So let's get back to from the Paling injury in the Islander game to the game I know you want to talk about for a variety of reasons, not just that it was not just because you've been saying all year long that you don't believe the Devils are legit.
I gotta say, I feel great about that now. Like when through the first 30-ish games of the season, I was a little nervous.
Sure.
But then
Well,
they've started to show their human side a little.
So let's put it this way. And you know this, and I'll pay attention to a team like the Devils maybe a little bit more than another because it's in interdivision. They play them enough.
Absolutely.
I saw the record that they had in the last 10 games coming in. Okay. So I knew it wasn't great. Then I watched, I guess I watched a hockey game. I mean, is it really when there's a combined 31 shots on goal in the game?
Not only did you watch a hockey game, Kevin, where did you watch this hockey game from?
Yeah, I was at Prudential Center. Walked right by as it's affectionately known up there. Walked right by the Rock that is sitting right out front.
And this was as a media member, correct? This was not a fan. You were covering. Okay.
Yep, covering up in the press box. Really, really nice viewpoint. I was sitting basically right across from the Flyer bench, looking straight at it, right along the blue line. So,
love that. Awesome.
Basically just another building to check off the list. Cool place, easy to get to from the train station. I'll give it that.
There you
Quick
go.
little.
That's always
I
nice.
mean, listen, you can't do much better for a road game than taking the train up literally between 2 and 3 hours before the game starts and being home by like 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah, for dinner.
Like legitimately home, not like I'm off the train home.
Right.
Like it was
So,
pretty easy trip.
yeah.
What interested me about this game is that, well, first of all, by the way, the Devils scored what was it, 2:17 into the game,
Lee Hamilton.
and I immediately got flashbacks to the last road game I covered between the Flyers and Devils, which was the Stadium Series, and went, oh
Oh
no, it's
no.
gonna be this kind of game where just from the jump they're chasing, right? And the thing was is they
Thankfully, not
played
really the case.
well, they played a better possession first period, but there were like
Yeah.
no shots on goal.
Right.
So it was pretty rough. And that's the thing, right? Like once they got the game tied in the second period, as they're playing the rest of that thing out and it carries over into the third. I'll get to the goal in the second period in a second because I know you want me to mention that too.
Mm-hmm.
As it goes into the third period, though, you're waiting for what I was waiting for is they've outplayed this team. So where's but it's 1-1 and there's not many shots on goal. So where's the bounce coming from? Where's the no. It wasn't who gets it. It's where's the luck factor that's going to allow the Devils to end up winning a game. Do you remember and it's interesting because I one of the things I thought about after this game was over going in hindsight was I had brought up that the Devils had won back-to-back Jacob Markstrom, and Markstrom didn't start this game, by the way, but had won back-to-back Jacob Markstrom starts in shutouts where he made 12 saves apiece. So the Devils don't give up a lot of shots sometimes. So I'm kind of laughing about that, for one, that they don't give up a lot of shots. But as you're watching this progress, you're like, they're not getting anything. It's the end of the second period. They have 7 or 8 shots on goal is what it turned out to be. 7. What a game, right? 7 shots on goal over 2 periods. Total shots 11-7. So you're just thinking.
Listen, New Jersey fans are used to this, right?
Oh, sure. It was a classic Flyers Devils game.
Right. Like Martin Brodeur wasn't in net, but
no, but I did walk past the statue outside, by the way. I had never been to Prudential Center before. So this was just to walk through some of the setting and things like that. But anyway.
Totally.
So second period, the goal that we are going to talk about, by the way, is one Matvei Michkov, who gets a breakaway, scores his 14th of the season. Another goal less than 2 minutes into the period, by the way. So everything's early. Now I will repeat the joke that I sent to the text group on here so I have done 2 road games so far this year, and good news for Flyers fans, I've got 2 more lined up before the end of the month, so you'll like where this is going. I go to Boston, and he scores 2 goals. I go to New Jersey, he scores another goal. This guy's got 14 career NHL goals, by the way, of which I didn't realize this until I actually went to go look for it. He's only scored 5 at home. Do you realize that?
Yes, because we had this conversation on our last show that he hadn't scored one at home in over a month. We did have a conversation.
Yeah, but he wasn't scoring, period, during part of that. So it kind of blurs together for a minute. You go back and you slowly start to realize 2 in Edmonton. Where else did he have? He had 1 before they ever got home. He didn't score at home until I think it was his 4th of the year. Washington. He had 1 in Washington.
Yep.
Obviously, a lot of his overtime moments have come on the road. He scored in Ottawa in overtime on the road, scored in St. Louis on the road in overtime. Pretty much at this point, to me, the 2 most memorable goals that he scored at home, maybe 3. I'll give it a third, because the 3 that I can remember the most are the first one against Minnesota, because posed a little bit in front of the bench. He had scored against San Jose at home, because that was right after he had been benched for a little bit. So he comes in, he gets breakaway goal, and he scores. And the overtime winner against Chicago was at home. Those are the 3 that I can remember distinctly among all of them. And listen, does he probably? Well, actually, no. This was the same. This was the game from earlier this week. So does he probably have another one if that play goes according to exact plan? Probably. Like, Morgan Frost gets the goal, but the whole setup was Drysdale for Michkov backdoor, and it just hits off his stick and sits there so Frost can clean it up. But he probably that's probably meant to be his goal. Ultimately, like, that's what the play is designed for. So, all right, fine. All right, so that you get that situation. So now I've seen 3 of his other goals on the road too. Like, I've seen all 5 at home. Because I think the other what were the other 2? He scored against Vegas and he scored against. There's another one. I'm just drawing a blank on which one it was.
While you're thinking about that, I did want to mention that if any sports books want to partner with us to score, to
For
get
me to
a
put the
a
anytime goal scorer on when I go on the road.
Matvey Mishkov anytime goal scorer. I mean, listen, we're available. I'm just saying we don't have any sponsors, and if you want to, we're available. You can email us. It's youwouldthinkpodcast@gmail.com. Okay. So.
Oh well, no, wait a minute. So how could I forget the last one then? I said I said Vegas because he had scored against Vegas at home, and then the last one would be the Anaheim goal from last week.
Oh right,
that's number 5. So there you go. Yeah. So now I've seen 3 of his goals on the road too.
It's pretty good.
Out of 9.
6.
Yeah,
right.
Out of 9 that he scored on the road. So, like I said, so good news for Flyers fans. The next time they are on the road at this point, I will be there when they play the Rangers, and I will be there when they play the Devils again next week. So, listen, there's something going on if he scores against the Rangers, does not score against the Islanders, and scores against the Devils again on the road. Then we've got something to say about this.
Listen, if you go to Madison Square Garden and he puts one in the back of the net, next week's show might be called the Kevin Effect, because that's weird. But regardless, this
great shot by the way, on his goal. Just because you're waiting.
He's good at that.
Well, because you're just waiting for whatever he's gonna do, and he is, like, picked his spot, a little bit of posting in, absolutely. And I didn't get to see it because, like, I just saw the puck go in, and I'm immediately, like, looking back down to type out that he scored. So I didn't see the celebration right away.
We've got something. My entire life, I have loved a good stick twirl.
Well, we've got a trend now. The stick twirl and the yell is really becoming something here. Yeah. So you get this game and you're waiting. Like I said, you get into the third period of this game. You're waiting for the bounce, like the bounce that does not go their way, that they should win this game.
Correct. And they've been the better team.
And you're asking truthfully, I'm sitting there asking myself, how do they lose this game? Because it's just going to be the way it's going to go. The Devils are going to find a way, And sure enough, it happens pretty early on in the third period that it's like, oh, here it comes, 2-on-1. It wasn't even a bounce. It was just a good play, really. And before you even have time to consider who scored the goal, that is when, and I had one of the guys from the station actually texted me afterwards and said something about, can we give one of the stars of the game to the Flyers replay coach? And I immediately come back because we all know who, like, by now, at least me, you start to know who some of the names of, like, the deep assistant coaches are and things like that. So I send back right away, Adam Patterson, one of the best. Caught that. Yeah, they caught that quick.
Well,
right.
And I was watching the game with my wife and we were talking about this and I was explaining to her that at this point in time, NHL staffs are so good.
They have entire war rooms set up themselves that are designed to catch this. Yes.
At this point in time, when an NHL team is challenging for offsides, they have a pretty good idea that it's offsides. Obviously, goalie interference is a little bit of a coin flip. It's a little more nebulous, shall we say.
This is a pretty clear-cut one.
But when it comes to offsides, get this. The rulings are consistent.
Yes.
So the teams can base it off of those consistencies.
Right.
And then create strategies so they only challenge it when they know they're right.
There is one I already brought this up recently too. There is one reason that I don't like, or one thing I don't like about offside challenges, and that's that you can go back 40 seconds and look at an offside that really doesn't affect the play whatsoever. And that's the rule. There's nothing wrong with that being the rule. I'm just saying that's the one thing. That's the one caveat of it.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have been a factor in this case because obviously it
Oh
was
no, this was
off a
immediate.
rush, right? So the offsides did directly kind of lead to the goal, but
So now, by the way, I want to get now. Let's get closer to the Flyer goal here because
yeah,
the minute leading up to that might have been like some of the first sustained pressure the Devils had had for a while. Like the game is slowly shifting to they're picking it up. There's not a lot of shots still, but they're picking it up and they're starting to do the possession game. And again, I'm waiting for the bad bounce. Who's going to get that? Like, when am I going to watch Jack Hughes plant himself at the side of the net? The puck just shoots over to him magically on a bad, a partially blocked shot, and it goes
right.
in the perfect spot. So they win this game because they have Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, and the Flyers don't, right? Like,
Yep.
kind of, right? And I still don't know, thinking back to this, I don't know how, after the shift that they had just had defending the entire way for about a minute at least, how Owen Tippett finds a gear to get a step on a play that probably should have been a penalty shot.
I,
But
probably timeout.
I mean, I don't see a shot. I'm saying I don't see a shot attempt. I don't see a true shot attempt on that breakaway. So I think it should be
flashed the whole way.
Right. So it should be a penalty shot.
Right.
And
yeah, it's crazy to me that that's not a penalty shot, but anyway.
But you look at the situation after that and the amount of time it's left in the game and go, this is probably short of overtime. This is it. Like this is your chance. And they make pretty quick work of this. And it's funny because what's something we've talked about from the top here with this one line that they've got that's been playing probably better than any line they've got for 6 weeks now, that they're playing so well that you can just throw them out there together on a power play and say, just go to work. It's not even that could have, like, it's not even, and I'm like, it's a good play. I'm not trying to say it's not a good play, but like, it's not a typical power play type of play. They have to win 2 puck battles just to get the puck into the right spot so that they can score. Now, I watched this clip back several times. If you want to know something that's really wrong with the New Jersey Devils right now, watch this clip on repeat 5 times to watch every mistake that is made, because I'm going to I'm not going to have the ability to pull it up on our screen quick enough at this point, but I'm going to go pull it up on my phone and just watch, because I saw the pause moment where you see the whole thing break down. And usually when there's a breakdown on something, one player has an oh crap moment, right? Like I'm messing this up, right? And I found the moment because Nico Hischier's the guy who has that moment, because the puck goes into the corner and I think Dawson Mercer's the other forward out there with Hischier, and Mercer's already playing the just send it up the kick plate. I believe that's Brendan Dillon who's in the corner with the puck. He's going to get met by Noah Cates. So now he's not able to make that play anymore. So now Mercer's out of position.
Yep.
And Hischier, after the play settles down and goes into the corner, he just stops. He's actually like, he actually stops and he pulls one of these. I'm going to do my best. I'm not fully on camera to do this, but he pulls one of these and he's adjusting his elbow pads.
Nico,
right?
You got to get your stuff to fit, Lana.
And is like, well, no, but I understand how that part happens, but I'm saying he stops and like thinks that, I guess he thinks the play is handled in the corner, because it's not only Dillon that's over in that spot, but the other defenseman on the ice is making a break that way too. So now what's just happened? Both defensemen go into the corner. Hischier's kind of laxing his way through as the middle of the ice, and there's this big gap that Bobby Brink sees and goes, I'm going there. I'm taking off straight there. He kind of pulls a rover move for a second. He doesn't like just take off, but he adjusts his positioning to go back. And now Noah Cates wins the puck battle and turns it to his forehand. And he sure realizes, I'm not there. The defenseman's not there. Oh no. And as Brink puts it in, he sure dives to try to make any effort to get there. He's not even close. And you just see as the moment happens, as everything shifts to the celebration of the goal, he sure actually puts his head into like his gloves for a second. Like, yeah, I messed up.
Yep. It's your captain right there. And that turned out to be the game winner as the
Yeah.
game kind of ended up going on from there.
Well, that was a moment where like everybody. By the way, I do want to give some credit here or a shout out, because if you always like to ask me the road game experience thing kind of thing or whatever. As I was preparing to get on the train to go up, very nice mix of both sides fans leaving to go up and be attending the game.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty evident to me when I left the train station that I got off. I don't know if I got off a train that just had a lot of them on already, or that there were just people at the train station who were starting, or they were just in an area around there. But I followed a good congregation over to that area. They all got in line at this one section. I kept walking to get to my entrance. But inside the building itself, pretty good, near 50-50 crowd. Like,
Really? Okay.
the cheer that went up when the goal was scored was very audible.
Okay.
And I heard toward the end of it, as things were kind of playing out, I could pick up a "Let's Go Flyers" chant.
It's always fun. We love it.
Like,
Oh, we
very
love it.
clear one. So very good crowd there. And they're just holding on at the end until they make the one play that they need to. Forster gets just enough to off the draw to poke it ahead. Now the game's really over as soon as Forster clears the zone there, because there was under 5 seconds left when the puck exits the zone. They're not clearing the zone and getting possession and all of that back before the clock runs out, probably. But Travis Konechny, for good measure, jumps on it and goes, "I'm going to score." And I didn't realize, like, you just know that that's going in. And at that point, I'm prepping to go down. Like, I'm racing to go downstairs.
You're essentially right.
Or getting ready to. But I saw on the replay afterwards, Konechny was none too happy with Dougie Hamilton at the time, and I didn't know why until I really watched. He's slashing him the whole, or at least he attempted a big chop at the end, and Konechny at least got a glancing blow, if not, like, it wasn't much, but he looked back and was giving them everything, at that point.
It's one of those things that, we've talked about here when these teams are going to play each other 2 more times in the next week and a half.
Familiarity.
Hamilton's looking for a pound of flesh. Konechny's going to be upset about it next
well,
time.
That also stems from frustration, because let's put it this way. The Devils are not as bad of a team as they showed in that game.
Not yet.
Well, they played a bad game. I don't think they're as bad of a team as that was, because that was a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. And I didn't catch all of this from doing Flyers post game, but you end up working your way back to the media workroom to finish up before I had to leave, and walked right in on the tail end of Sheldon Keefe's press conference, which was not short by any stretch. He talked for probably about 8-9 minutes post game. Nice. Where everything was execution's the problem. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. You got, like, the goal that they scored was with the fourth line on the ice. Dougie Hamilton scores the goal, but it was the fourth line on the ice. Are the top line guys trying too hard? He goes, "That's a BS excuse." Like, he sounds every bit like a coach who doesn't have an answer. I don't know what to do. We just got to be better. We can be, but we just got to be. And then they lost the next day.
It turns out
they're going through one right now where Carolina, if somebody was better in the Metro, they might, we might be having the same conversation about, well, Tampa and Ottawa. Watch out that they don't switch places. The Devils aren't falling out of third place next week because there's not a margin for that to happen. But they're struggling.
But continued sustained play like this, and you will eventually fall out of it. Like, there's enough season left that.
Well, and the catch is, it's not what it used to be. It used to be they don't have a goalie. They can score a bunch of goals, but no, it's not that it's no longer an excuse. They lost 2 games this weekend, 3-1 and 2-1. And the Flyers one essentially was 2-1 because it was an empty netter with a second left.
Right. Your goalie only allowed 2 goals, right? Yeah.
That, by the way, was, if I'm trying to remember correctly, that was, if I'm reading this correctly, was your backup who hadn't started since January 1st, I think. Who gave you a only 2 goals allowed performance. You know,
You can't waste that start if you're the New Jersey Devils.
right. And then Markstrom plays fine the next day against Ottawa. It gives up 2 goals. They lose.
All right. Since we're talking about goaltending, we do have one more kind of Flyers topic to touch on before we get to our looking ahead section.
Yep.
Uh, kind of later in the week, as the week kind of progressed itself out, Ivan Fedotov got some playing time, and John Tortorella confirmed that at this current time, he is the number 2, and Alexei Kolosov has slid to the number 3. Tortorella indicated that he's not sure exactly what's going on with Kolosov, if he's going to get sent down or what the deal is. But as at this point in time, Fedotov is your number 2, Kolosov is your number 3.
Right. Well, and as it should be, because Fedotov has played well enough in his last handful of starts that at this point in time, I think you've got to stick with that. I think that
Kolosov has looked rough in his last couple outings.
I think at this point, I don't know how much longer this goes before Kolosov ends up down for whatever reason. I sure hope it's not, because let's put it this way, they have a natural opportunity to send him down.
Right.
That's 4 Nations. You send him down and literally just sit there and say the reason you're going down is because we don't have games or practices. We want you playing.
2-week stretch.
And I'm sure he accepts it. Not to mention the fact that, like, people have brought up by now, the KHL thing is a little bit blown out of proportion at this point because they're in playoffs.
Yeah,
like, what are you going to do? Join a team in their playoff run? They figured everything out by this point too.
Yeah, that seemed like a bigger threat in the early portion of the season.
Right, like now it might be if you want to play, it's the AHL or nothing.
And you have to earn it. And listen, quite frankly, I like what I've seen out of Alexei Kolosov. I'm not giving up on him by any stretch.
No. I don't think anybody should. He's got raw talent. It's just it needs work, and he needs to play in the minors.
But at this point, if you send him down and he refuses to report to the Lehigh Valley, or in some form or fashion tries to force his way back to Russia or Belarus, wherever it is, I'm pretty okay with looking at other options for goaltending moving forward. And again, I'm not giving up on the kid. I'm not, burning the bridge.
No, at some point in time, like
at this point in time, I'm kind of letting him go.
I think, look, I don't know what that conversation is going to be like. They're just going to have it at some point. And like I said, I just don't know how much longer you can keep that going. Like, I can understand that you're concerned about Ersson and you want to make sure for sure and certain that he's healthy. I get that.
That is my concern.
And by the way, little footnote here that I didn't bring up from earlier. I'm trying to remember. Well, I guess it was Florida because it had to be the home game because they only played at home once this week. There was the representation from Sweden for 4 Nations was around because it is not a certainty that Linus Ullmark is able to play in 4 Nations now with his injury. So as such, apparently, if you were to look up the Swedish goaltenders in the NHL, Ersson actually was like number 4 in most categories, despite the way that some of the numbers may look. He still is like right there.
Well, and we're talking about a 3 or 4 game tournament where most
he's number 3
are going to carry 3 goalies, and right, exactly. How many of those third goalies are going to see any play?
Right, so you get on the ice and you practice with a bunch of your countrymen for like a couple weeks,
which will be kind of cool, frankly.
Yeah, sure.
But if you already had a vacation booked, no, I'm sure it's an honor to go serve your or not serve your country, but
play for your country, represent your country. Right. Yes,
on the international stage in the first best on best tournament featuring NHL players since the last World Cup.
Yeah, probably.
I'm pretty sure.
But anyway,
unless you count the handful of players that go to the World Championship every year, which I don't.
No, but actually, funny enough, I think Ersson has.
I think so too. I think he
Ersson's been one of those guys who's been. Yeah, well, I know last year I don't think he did because last year I think he was driven into the ground so much he took the time off.
Right.
Year before, I think he might have.
Okay.
I
mean, hey, listen, if Sam Ersson can stay healthy, we have seen quality NHL goaltending out of him.
Guess what? Guess what? After he's now won 4 straight starts.
Yep.
And 4 of 5 since coming back, where, let's face it, even against Dallas, he did not look that bad.
If you're John Tortorella, do you play Ersson against the Rangers and then Fedotov against the Islanders?
Yes.
Okay. And let's use that to transition to our looking ahead schedule because we've touched on it a couple of times during this show. Tuesday there is a home game against the Detroit Red
Yep.
Wings, and then Thursday and Friday the Flyers will be spending a lot of time in New
Well,
York.
wait. Well, wait a second now. So I want to actually.
I'm sorry, yeah, Thursday and Friday.
I don't know the answer to that question. The obvious answer is you want Harrison to play the better opponent, or what you think is the better opponent anyway. There's also an element, though. Just think about something for a moment.
Fedotov against Shesterkin?
Well, Fedotov's best game of the year, in my opinion, came against the Rangers.
Right.
And Harrison just played the Islanders last week and won.
Yeah.
Now listen, there's no rhyme or reason to this the next time this happens. Fedotov's probably playing the Islanders and Harrison's getting the Devils twice.
Yeah.
And that might be the reason why I go the order that I did, because you just had 2 days off from games, right? So Harrison plays Tuesday because it just feels natural. He's going to play. Harrison probably plays the Rangers because it's the Rangers, it's MSG. You play him. You give Fedotov the Islanders, which breaks up the fact that, okay, now Harrison gets another 3 days between games before you play the Devils twice. And then Fedotov gets the team he played again in a week.
Unless, they decide after Tuesday's game against Detroit that Harrison needs an extra day. For whatever reason. They could go either direction with it, honestly.
Right, but see, I wonder if you break that up, because then he's playing 3 and 5.
Right.
Or 3 and 6.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could have him go 2 days off, 2 games in 3 nights, 3 days off, 2 games in 3 nights.
Right.
And then
that's why John Tortorella gets the big bucks.
Well, that's why John Tortorella talks to Kim Dillabaugh about the goalies and figures out when they should go. So I hope I'm not reading John Tortorella's mind with this one, and I'm reading Kim Dillabaugh's mind and going that Harrison for 2, Fedotov in against the Islanders, Harrison for 2 against the Devils, Fedotov in against the Islanders, and then you set yourself up nicely for, I don't know. Do you balance it out and you say Harrison gets Colorado, Fedotov gets Utah, and then Harrison gets the last 2 to go into the break?
That far ahead, maybe. Yeah.
No, the reason I'm bringing it up is because this doesn't feel this way, but it's worth mentioning. They got the 3 games this week. They got 3 more next week. January's over. They play 4 times in February before Four Nations hits. No, and then do you realize that once that break hits, that's only 10 games.
Yeah.
Then after these next 10 games, they have 6 total, and then it's trade deadline.
Well, and as I've mentioned on some previous shows, there seems to be a bit of a soft trade deadline for nations. And
there's definitely been waiver activity.
Well, what I was going to say is that if there is a Four Nations, soft trade deadline because you're worried about players getting hurt and blah, 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 blah.
Well, only the guys who would be in it.
I wonder if Rasmus Ristolainen's on the move.
Well, fair enough. The problem is I don't think they want to do that right now. The problem, actually, you know what the real problem with that is? The problem with that is that I think there's a soft trade deadline for people who may be in Four Nations who are on contract years, and it's like the value is never going to be higher than if we decide to do this now. Whereas I don't know if Rasmus Ristolainen is getting moved this week before, or in the weeks before Four Nations, at the trade deadline, in the offseason, at all.
And fun fact, there's no trade freeze during Four Nations, so he could theoretically get traded during Four Nations.
Sure, I guess so. Yeah, why not? Yeah, that's a good point too, because I wonder how many guys, like Kolosov is a natural send him down play during Four Nations with the Phantoms material. I wonder if there's anybody else. Like, seriously, I wonder if there's anybody else on this roster that you could look at and say, like, listen, Stranger Things. This is the thing. I don't know. Like, you could argue you could do it with Michkov technically, but I think with Michkov, you want him to have the break because it's more games than he's played ever in the KHL. So that's a different story. But is there a guy otherwise, like, and like short of the obvious choices, right? Like, short of if Ulixel is still up, that you send him down because of course you'd want him playing in the minors over those 2 weeks. Of course.
Rodrigo Abels is going to get sent back down.
Yeah, that's another guy who we should bring up really quick because he did get called. I don't need to pull the tab back up. He did get called up in place of.
I was going to say, I think you did have the tab pulled up. He was called up for Paling. Paling was put on the IR. He did participate at practice today. It does look like he is going to make his NHL debut
Yeah,
tomorrow
so there were a
against
couple things
Detroit.
going on at practice. It was
Yeah,
so he got called up. Paling's obviously on IR. Scott Lawton was not at practice for personal reasons.
personal. Yeah.
And there was one other player. Eric Johnson was on maintenance, which is really neither here nor there because he hasn't played in a while. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've watched these lately. This is a funny little
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
Eric Johnson has now taken on a starring role in the Flyers pregame videos. Which is certainly like, listen, hey, if I could replicate stuff like that, I would when I make my little pregame reels. But Eric Johnson either doing the swim meet or the just popping on the bench right in front of Brian Smith as he's trying to do his read.
Listen, I respect the hustle. I respect it out of Eric Johnson. I think he's starting to set himself up for a little bit of a post-career media career type
Well,
of
it's
thing.
funny you should say that because he did do the broadcasting camp over the summer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And
Do you know how
that's
many?
the guy.
Do you know how many ex-Flyers did that camp? By the way, we talked about it before, but do you know how many did?
Probably a bunch.
Well, Johnson did it. Garnet Hathaway did it. And then there were at least two others that were like I think one of them was Nate Thompson, like who did it at one point in time. And like there are others too that like have not played in a while that are like, oh yeah, that guy. I think Michael Delzato might have been one of them.
That's really funny.
And the thing is that like Johnson certainly I've gotten to understand a little more having him be around the whole year, that you see some of the personality there and things like that. I could have told you from, well, at this point, this is his second season here. Not Johnson, I'm talking about at this point, but this is his second season here, and there's more to come. And I could have told you after the first 2 months, Garnet Hathaway's cut out for a desk job. He is cut out to sit on the TNT panel and talk for 3 hours.
He is going to be some networked version of Paul Bissonnette, and he's going to be very successful on that.
He absolutely has a future in that if he wants it. And I would give it to him in a second because he's very good at explaining things. I know we tend to lump the Paul Bissonettes of the world that have a role into like, well, that's all they know. No, Garnet Hathaway really knows what the hell he's talking about and can explain it very well. And I would be an absolute fit, and I would listen to every story he wants to tell.
As the kids say, Hathaway knows puck. And that since we're talking about player futures, I think that is a good place to put a pin on it for this week.
So 3 games this week, right?
I was going to say we didn't really dive into Noah Cates that much. He had a great week. I thought Joel Farabee had a great week. I thought Bobby Briggs
Joel Farabee coming back in the lineup after being benched for a couple was very impressive in the last handful. Yes, that's fair.
And he came back with the right attitude as a veteran leader type of figure in this locker room. I think Joel Farabee had an excellent week just from a position on the team standpoint.
Sure. And well, like you already mentioned the other 3, like that whole line had a great week. I mean, even I'm trying to think, because defensively, I want to pick out somebody too. And believe it or not, you know who's had a better week? Jamie Drysdale had a good, solid little week, all things considered. Not perfect by any stretch, but something to build on.
A little under the radar. You think Nick Seeler had a really nice
week? You already mentioned the defenseman who I think we would have to pick as the guy who really had the week, because I almost wonder, do they even win the last 2 games if not for Rasmus Ristolainen? Like he played brilliantly in both of those games.
He is really stepping it up. And I'm hoping Rasmus Ristolainen's a guy that I'm hoping really takes that international flag and runs with it.
I know for fact he was the guy who got the belt after the Jersey game.
Right.
And the game before, he was still against the Islanders, +1, 5 blocks, 3 hit. Yeah, see, like that, he's not doing anything offensive production wise whatsoever. He is giving you everything that he's giving you everything you expect from Nick Seeler too. And Nick Seeler does it too, by the way. Like I think by the time that game was over, the Jersey game in particular, they had 33 block shots and there were 31 shots total between the two teams in the game. So there was plenty to go around block shot wise.
Yeah, don't look now. The Flyers are starting to kind of put things together, and that is a good place for us to leave it this week. We will see if that statement ages well next week.
Yeah, we'll see.
3 games this week. There are 6 points up for grabs. Kevin will be covering more than half of them this week. Make sure to follow him at Kevin_Durso on social media. It's at Kevin Durso on Blue Sky. And then make sure you're following us too. We're at YWT Podcast everywhere. Find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the like button over there, share it with your friends. We upload the audio version as well as a version with video, so check us out over there. Really helps us out. So, other than that, we will be back next week, roughly the same time, roughly the same channel. Until then, follow us everywhere. We'll see you.